Good morning, I'm Brian Ashley G. Casalia, and today I will explain how I create this simple standard calculator program. The first thing that I do is I import javax.swing.asterisk, then java.out.asterisk, then java.out.event.asterisk to avoid error in our program. Then inside the public class final exam in OOP is I declare JFrame, JLabel, JTextField, JButton, button group, and J radio button, then J button. And I name the variable in JFrame is frame, then simple standard calculator, then label in JLabel, and also background label in other JLabel. Then in text field is text field, in button group is BG, and on radio button is on and off radio button, then delete button, clear button, then num7 button. This is a number from 0 to 9. Then I also put dot button, sin button, cos button, plug button, add button, minus button, and multiply and divide button. Also the equals button. Then I declared this double num and answer and int calculation for this method public void operation. And inside in this method is I put a switch statement, and there is 4 different cases. Then the first case is to add, the second case is to subtract, and the case 3 is to multiply, case 4 is to divide. And this is the calculation formula. I put the plus sign here, and in the subtraction is I put the minus sign. Then in the multiplication is I put asterisk, which means to multiply. Then in divide I put slash, which means to divide. Then in this method public void on radio button is inside of this I set the text field to set enable true, then on radio button to set enable to false, because when our on radio button is on, we can click the on radio button. Then the other is I set it to true to able to use it. Then in off radio button is the same, and here the off radio button is set to false, because if the radio button is off, we can use or we can click the off radio button. Then in public void initialize method, here in this method I create a new JFrame object, which is the name is frame simple standard calculator. Then I set the title to simple calculator by Brian Casalia. Then the set bounds is to set the size of the JFrame. Then set default close operation is to, when we click the X icon is the application will be closed. Then set layout to null. Then JTextField, I create a JTextField object which is named textfield. Then set editable to false to avoid editing and avoid typing in the text field. Then text field set horizontal alignments string constants to right is when we click a number or a button, the text will appear from the right. Then set font is I set the font to Arial, then bold, and the size is 23. Then set bound is to set the size of the text field. Then this add syntax is to add our text field to our frame. Then on label is set horizontal alignment to center, because to appear the text from the center. Then set bounds to set the size. Then also add the label to our JFrame. And on background label is I set icon on the background label, and this is the location of the picture in my computer. Then background label set bounds is to set the size of this background label. Then also I add the background label to our JFrame. Then the button group is I name the object to BG. Then on radio button for J radio button, and also the off radio button for off radio button. Then I add action listener to execute this method when we click the on radio button, and also the same to off radio button. Then on delete button is almost the same. I put an add action listener to execute this code when we click the delete button, and this code is used for when we click this delete button. It means it also like a backspace, delete one by one the numbers or the text in the text field. Then this clear button is almost the same then, because I put an action listener. Then when we click the clear button, the text field will be cleared because of this code. Then on number 0 to 9 is like this. I put an add action listener to execute this code when we click the button. When we click the number 7, this number 7 will appear in the text field. Also the same with the other numbers button. Then in this dot button is almost the same. I put add action listener to execute this code when we click or press the dot button, and this dot symbol will appear in the text field. Then in send button is the same. I think it is the same because I put an add action listener to execute this code when we click the send button, and I put a math class which is math.send to calculate the send. Then on cost button and log button is the same. The difference is I change this math class to math.cost and this math class to math.log. Then in add button is I put also a add action listener to execute this code when we click the add button. Then this I initialize this number variable to double.parse double text field that get text. Then I call the switch statement calculation, and 1 is because the case 1 is add, and case 2 is subtract, case 3 is to multiply, then case 4 is to divide. Then in minus button is the same as add button. The difference is I change this into 2 because 2 is to subtract. Then in multiply I change this to 3 because 3 is to multiply in our case statement, switch case statement. Then divide is 4. Then the equals button is almost the same. I put also an add action listener. Then inside of this action performed is I call the method operation, then label that set text to clear the text field. To clear the label. This method operation is this. I call this method. Then after that, I create a constructor and I name it public final exam in OOP. Then I call this method initialize, which is this all of the code. This all code are inside of initialize button. I call it inside of our constructor. Then I set this on radio button to set enable to false, because when we run the program, it is already on, and I set it to false to avoid clicking this on radio button. Then after that, this is the main method, this is the only thing that will runnable, and inside of this main method is I called our constructor, which is final exam in OOP, to run all of this code. And then our frame is I set this I set our frame to set visible to true because to be able to display, because when we set this into false, nothing will display. So it is better to always set to true. Then let's run our program. Then this is when we first run the program, the picture that the icon that of the icon that we set here in background label will appear. That's the reason why I put this background label in this part, because if we first run the program, the picture will display, and if the cursor of our mouse is point on the button will appear. Then it is working properly. Let's try it. 12 plus 3 equals 15. Then 5 minus 4 equals 1. Then 5 times 5 equals 25. Then 10 divided by 2 is equals to 5. Then also, the sin button are working, the cos button is working, then then the 9 then the log button is working, also the delete button, and also the clear button. Also the off and on radio button is working properly. Then this is our text field, then this is our label, which is here it is the code for our label. Then our logo is, our picture is, it is our background label. That's all. Thank you.